What's up, sports fans, and particularly NBA fans? Welcome to another edition of King's Court, brought to you by www.sports-kings.com, the Mecca in sports. I'm Andy Flynn. I'm your host. With me today, I have Frank Santos.
Just like to shout out Charlie Brown, rocking the Charlie Brown, and screw you, Lucy Incognito. Nobody likes your bullying.
Jeez. We have Michael Prosser.
What's up, guys? I'd also like to shout out to a certain soda company. I'm not allowed to name any names, but a congratulatory shout out is in order for a certain soda flavor that was only available at a certain restaurant that I frequent, and now it is finally out in bottle form and in cans. And I just want to say thank you, base god.
and what Josh Hartnett was saying, it goes well with tacos. And last but not least, we have Desmond Palmer. What's up, Desmond?
A shout out to the best player in the NBA, LeBron James, 49 points. Thank you for not being clutch and missing that free throw, because you could have 50.
Should have had 50. I will not forget that because I was
Hashtag should have had 50.
Hashtag should have had 50.
Hashtag blame Westbrook. So
we'll get to that in a moment, though, folks.
We have a good playoff show for you today, playoff driven. We got a little NBA news chunk in there. We're going to go over the Pacers, the Wizards series. We're going to go over the Thunder, the Clippers series. We're going to talk some coaches that are out there lurking around, some who are looking for jobs, some who recently lost their jobs. Shout out to Mike Brown. And last but not least, we'll kind of go into some finals chat, a little premature finals chat, but that's what we do around here. We jump the gun. So first off,
speak for yourself, man.
Pacers, easy there, easy. He doesn't realize that I have a mute button. Pacers, Wizards, and the Pacers kind of looked dead in the water after that first round series against Atlanta. Now it's like they're back. Are they back? They took a fishing trip, which kind of maybe postponed their inevitable fishing trip. So let's talk the Pacers. Let's talk Roy Hibbert first. Michael, Roy Hibbert was playing abysmal, I guess is the word I'm going to use. He was averaging about 6 points, 3 rebounds a game coming into the series. And that was actually kind of spiked because he had like a 13.7 rebound closeout game against the Hawks. First game against Wizards, he gets the goose egg in rebounds and points. He gets a couple of blocks. I think he had 2. Yeah, 2 blocks. And then now all of a sudden he's like 28-9, 14-5, 17-9. What's going on? He's putting this a little bit to a fan heckling him, and then I also seen him attributing Paul George taking him fishing after Paul George. Yeah, we won't go into that. Michael, go ahead.
Well, I mean, personally, this is the way I looked at it. This is me. This is Roy Hibbert. This is what Roy Hibbert did. Bam! Completely took me by surprise, dropping 28 on Washington. The entire Indiana Pacers squad has seemingly woken up and was like, okay, yeah, hey, did you guys forget we were the #1 seed in the playoffs? Nah, you guys didn't forget that. We're up 3-1 now. Completely took me by surprise. I seriously thought that, this was going to be one of those series that Washington kind of, they realized that, hey, we got a team on the ropes. We can attack. But as I said last week, this is not an Indiana Pacers team that you want to let hang around because they will come back and bite you in the ass. What does Washington do? They blow a 17-point lead. It is official. No lead is safe in the District of Columbia. The Capitals can never hold a lead. The Nationals can never hold a lead, even though they always seemingly come back. Obviously, the Wizards couldn't hold a lead. And let's not go into the Redskins. They can't hold anything right now. But I really think that this is kind of the exact shot in the arm that the entire Pacers roster needed was Roy Hibbert getting back on track. I mean, good for Paul George for just taking, his buddy Roy Hibbert fishing. Not even talking about the game of basketball. Not one time, apparently, did they talk about the game of basketball. It was just a fishing trip. 2 bros sitting in a boat catching some fish.
Eskimo
Taking his
bros.
mind off of everything. Good move, Paul George. And if Washington, doesn't get everything, doesn't get the ship wrote right now, it's looking like they could be sitting back at the old MCI Center as it used to be, the Verizon Center, watching Indiana play Miami.
So, Devin, what do you thought on this? I mean, Paul George goes from catfishing to real fishing with Hibbert. Everything seems okay.
Well, Mike, I like that little analogy you made with Roy Hibbert as your hand and smack you in the face.
Completely took me by surprise when he dropped.
But you know what?
What?
I'm not going to give him credit. Yes, it sounds bitter.
Whoa!
I'm gonna say he did what he was supposed to do all series long, all playoffs long. For a 7'2", 270 pounds of just being a big body in the paint, probably the biggest center in the NBA that we have today. The fact of the matter is, we were raving about this guy mid-season. Oh my God, his defensive impact. He can also make plays in the paint. And then, like Andy said, he was abysmal the first half of the playoffs. And he wasn't – it was his second half that was strong. His first half was kind of iffy. Came back in the second half. So I will give him credit for at least rebounding after that second half. But you did what you were supposed to do. I got to give the credit to Paul George. Yes, you're the best player on this team, so you are also supposed to have big games like this. We've been waiting for Paul George to explode. But the fact of the matter is his defense on Bradley Beal down the stretch was amazing. Even the last play where the defense during the inbound caused an errant pass by Trevor Ariza, that was all Paul George. After a while, he clamped down on defense on the perimeter, and he led the Pacers to this win. I still don't – there's a funny feeling in my stomach. I don't know if you guys saw the commercial, like Stephen A. Smith is like in Richard Sherman's stomach, and he's like telling him –
I did see that.
Yeah, and it's like –
that was about retarded, but
yeah,
I saw it.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. But there's a little guy in my stomach telling me, do not trust Roy Hibbert. Because at the end of the day, this series, in my opinion, is over for the Washington Wizards. I thought they would win this series in 7 games. Obviously, they are not because, in my opinion, 3-1 is the same as being down 3-0, especially when you're going back to Indiana.
Unless you're the Detroit Pistons.
Right. But with that said, when they have to face the Miami Heat, which that series against Brooklyn, sorry, Frank, but that's going to be over as well. Shout out to Brooklyn, though, because they played – I mean, if they were playing Indiana right now, they'd probably have that series won.
Shout out to Paul Pierce for running his mouth. And then LeBron scores 40.
And shout out to that little dude in Desmond's stomach. I don't know why Stephen A. Smith is in your stomach, Desmond. You might want to get that shit checked out.
I didn't say it was Stephen A. Smith. I don't know who it is. I think it's Charles Barkley. I'm not sure.
Oh, God. You need surgery ASAP, man.
So let's get Frank's take on this whole thing here.
I agree. I agree to a degree with Desmond. I don't want to give Roy Hibbert all the credit because, like he said, it should be something he should be doing the entire time. It's kind of like when girls have boyfriends and like they treat them like complete trash, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, he bought me flowers." Like, yeah, he should be buying you flowers the entire time. Like, this isn't just because he doesn't usually do these things doesn't mean that makes him a good guy. Anyways, I think that Roy Hibbert might actually just be one of these irrational confidence guys that we don't know about. I think his mental game is a lot more important than a lot of players. So when he was down and out, all of a sudden he was just completely out of the game. I'd also like to say that I think this is more about what the Wizards aren't doing than it is about what the Pacers are doing. I think you're just seeing a young team that could not execute down the stretch of 2 critical games. And that's my objective view, but I think from a perception matter, it doesn't matter to the Pacers because they see that they're up 3-1, they're back, and I think they think that's all that matters. And I think it's going to give them the confidence to give Miami a good series, even though I think Miami is going to wipe the floor with them.
I think one thing for me with Indiana, and I want to give Roy Hibbert credit because he's obviously earned a little bit at this point, although what he said could have been doing this the whole time. And Paul George, obviously, too, I want to give him credit. He had, like 38 the other night?
39.
39. So I still want to kind of take credit away from Frank Vogel if I can, because I still feel like the locker room doesn't belong to him. And it's not that he's a bad coach. I think he still has lost this locker room because it feels like it took the players to kind of commit and be back. And I think their defense is back. That's
Raul Butler.
That's so we talked about this last time. Like, what does it take for Raul Butler to be the guy to call you out? But I feel like
he looked in the mirror, Andy. He looked in the mirror.
He did. To talk about what Frank said a little bit to kind of go off of that with the Pacers or the Wizards not executing. I kind of feel like that, suffocating Indiana defense has kind of come back. And maybe that has something to do with it, the fact that they're a young team. John Wall's struggled. Bradley Beal struggled. I think the whole team, all their guards and wingmen, like, Lance Stevenson, Paul George, George Hill, these guys have played good defense. So that was something that was missing last series against Atlanta. I don't know. I almost kind of attribute some of that to Jeff Teague. I think Jeff Teague's game, which is to just fly towards the hoop as fast as he can, it kind of hurt the Indiana a little bit. They weren't expecting that. John Wall's not really doing that, and I expected him to, so I just don't know. I do think Indiana's back. So let's go real quick before we move on to the next one. Does everybody think Indiana's going to win this? I think Indiana's going to win the next game and close it out. Michael, how about you?
Yeah. As sad as I am to say it, the Washington's just too young. It's good playoff experience, though, but they don't have that killer instinct yet.
Absolutely. Frank, what do you got?
Yeah, I got Indiana in 5. I think they close it out.
Desmond?
Same thing. 3-1 is the same as 3-0 when you're going back to another team's home court.
Except in hockey.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Orlando Magic and you're 3-1 against the Pistons. Shout out to Tracy McGrady, who made his awful, well, it wasn't his pitching debut.
Hey, it wasn't his fault. His teammates were letting him down out there.
I know.
Yeah,
he's
not give him responsibility.
He ain't going to the MLB. So let's jump into this next enticing series here, which is the Clippers and the Thunder. We watched the Clippers go bonkers the other night at home, or the other afternoon, I guess, at home. That time it was probably like 2 p.m. And let's talk Scott Brooks a little bit too. What's he doing, or what's he not doing? Hashtag blame Westbrook. That's my spot today. That's what we're going to do. That's what everybody else is doing. So, Frank, we're going to let you start this one.
I've thought this for a while. Well documented that Scott Brooks probably is not the best coach for this OKC Thunder team. I think he did a great job getting them from where they had to be from a young team to a more established contender. But I think sometimes you just take a team as far as you can possibly take them, and you just need. It's kind of like, when Pat Riley took over for Stan Van Gundy, even though you can argue Stan Van Gundy probably could have done it, but sometimes you just need that more established, more respected coach to come in and take you the whole way. I just think they don't – it's a shame that they don't run offense, that you saw a Memphis Grizzlies team who is offensively challenged consistently running better plays than OKC is running with possibly the two best athletes, like physical athletes in the NBA. And I just think it's time for Scott Brooks to go. And you're seeing the difference between Doc Rivers, an established coach who runs offensive plays, and Scott Brooks, and it's just showing itself constantly in this series. And I don't even blame Scott Brooks. I just think sometimes you don't have the ability, and it's not his fault. I think he's a guy that the OKC players love, but I don't think they respect him as a coach. And I think you see that a lot in life. It's kind of like when you like your boss, but you don't respect them and you won't do if they tell you to do something, you just won't do it because you think they're nice and you think they're a pushover. I think you're seeing the very same thing from OKC.
And I think there's a lot of instances, and I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like sometimes Durant and Westbrook just go out there and do whatever they want to. And that kind of shows to what Frank's saying. They like the guy, but they don't respect him. Desmond.
And that's the problem that lies with him. You talk about Durant and Westbrook doing what they want, especially Westbrook. But I don't even blame him. Scott Brooks.
Hashtag blame Westbrook, Desmond. You're doing it.
Yeah, I don't want to put most of the blame on Westbrook. When you're a team leader, you do deserve some blame. There's a percentage of blame. I'm just not going to get into it right now. Scott Brooks, he deserves it as well. But Kevin Durant, you're the MVP. And yes, I got to get at him, folks. When you're the MVP and 6-foot Chris Paul is guarding you, why do you have your back to the basket? See, now this is Roy Hibbert manifest in Kevin Durant, and this is what's pissing me off.
Got a case of the
Wow.
Hibberts.
Why, if 6-foot Chris Paul is guarding you at the top of the key, why do you have your back to the basket? Attack him. I don't want to hear 6'11". Kevin Durant 7 foot tall. He's just like he is.
He can attack him though.
Yes,
like he can't do it.
I don't understand. Chris Paul is a leader. He's the best point guard in our game. He's underratedly strong for a point guard. But the fact of the matter is he should not be guarding Chris Paul in key spots. That was in key moments. Chris Paul was switched on to Kevin Durant, and he stopped him.
But it worked. Maybe he should be.
and I threw one of my dog's toys at the television because I was like, this cannot be happening.
Why are you gonna do your dog
Damn,
like that?
Fido.
Yeah, his name is Mojo, but I was sorry about that. But with that said, Kevin Durant, you're the most valuable player in the NBA, or so people say. I still say LeBron James, but that's a different story. But the fact of the matter is, you should not be getting stopped in key moments in that game. The Thunder could have had this series wrapped up a little bit easier, but in key moments, to get guarded by Chris Paul, that's all my mind was on. I didn't even think about Westbrook's erraticness. I didn't even think about the horrible spacing implemented by Scott Brooks at key moments in this game as well. The fact of the matter is, all three of them deserve blame. Kendrick Perkins at times should not even be on the damn floor. But the fact of the matter is that was like
Freak's boy.
That was the low light of the game for me. Kevin Durant getting completely stopped by the 6-foot Chris Paul. I mean, I don't think people understand how horrible that is.
I'm convinced at this point that Kendrick Perkins has the V. Stiviano leaked tapes just in his locker of Scott Brooks calling somebody a bad word or something like that. That's the only reason.
I don't know.
That's the only reason why he starts. The only explanation.
You need to roll with Steven Adams. I mean, I don't understand why Kendrick Perkins is on the floor. Blake Griffin at times, his eyes just light up when he's doing those pick and rolls to the basket because there's no way Kendrick Perkins athletically can stay with him. Steven Adams at least could stay with him. Now, I'm not saying he's going to stop Blake from taking a shot, but you have a better percentage if you can actually roll with the guy when he's rolling on the pick and roll. But with that said, Kevin Durant, man, I mean, the 40 points that he had, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, that meant nothing. Let LeBron James get Chris Paul on a switch. You already know what's going to happen.
Different player, though. Different player. Let's get Michael's take.
Thanks, guys. Wow. Oh. No, I'm just kidding. No. Everybody, great points. But the whole time, both Frank and Des were talking, I flashed back a little bit to the 1993 NCAA finals between North Carolina and Michigan, where North Carolina and Dean Smith were patterns. Everything was ran a certain way. It had to be done this way. And Michigan and the Fab Five were like a pickup game on a basketball court. Everybody was erratic, but it worked for them. Can we say the same thing about this Oklahoma City team? Is this working for them? Against a team that's patterned like Doc Rivers' Clippers are? I don't know. Now, had something like this, had they been able to, or had they had this game, I think, in Oklahoma City instead of LA, I don't think that the comeback would have happened. I think that crowd, that Staples Center crowd, yeah, it's still the same Staples Center people. Doesn't matter who's in there, it's still the same Staples Center. It's a hard place to play. It's always a difficult place, even if the lowly Lakers are in there. Yeah. But anyways, you know what? Maybe I don't know if I really know all too much about Scott Brooks to comment on does he go, does he not need to go? But I mean, you got to give the guy credit for what he did. He got them to a place that, a lot of people didn't even think they were going to be. He got them to the finals against the Heat. They're a perennial powerhouse in the Western Conference now. Can he get them over that next step? Can he help them win a championship? Maybe. It's possible. We'll never know until we find out. But if Scott Brooks leaves, who replaces him? You going to try to get Mark Jackson in there? Do you bring in a guy like Stan Van Gundy? Do you want to see an elder veteran like George Karl, who we'll get into in a moment? Do you bring in an unknown, like an assistant? You've got
there's guys out there,
right?
I think there's guys out there.
I think if you bring uncertainty to that right now, it might throw the balance off here a little bit. Like Oklahoma City is going to be a contender. You know what you're going to get out of Kevin Durant. You know you're going to get a horrible shot at least once a try out of Russell Westbrook. At least once. I'm being nice here. At least once.
So let me talk about. I have two things because you guys pretty much have said everything that could possibly be said about this. This Thunder team and Scott Brooks. My one thing with Scott Brooks is this: if he doesn't do what he's doing, so we see in the playoff basketball system that this isn't necessarily working. This ISO, get Kevin Durant up to the top of the key, get Westbrook up to the top of the key, get Reggie Jackson to the top of the key, let him go to work. Now, what if he flows and he does, let's pass the ball, let's get 3 or 4 touches per possession in the half court. We'll design some plays. If that's not working, does everybody attack it now and be like, well, here's Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. He's not using them. He's not getting them enough one-on-one looks. I feel like that's where everybody will go if a set play doesn't work or a couple set plays don't work. I also feel like hanging off of that, we're played into the part where Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are expected to go one-on-one. They probably expect to get the ball and be able to go one-on-one. So is that going to cause friction there? Again, I'm not saying it will. I just feel like that's a question mark. As far as Chris Paul guarding Kevin Durant goes, we're seeing a trend now. Tony Allen last series, granted, Tony Allen's probably the best perimeter defender in the league. He's top 3 easily, no disputing that. But Chris Paul is easily one of the best defending point guards in the NBA as well. Tony Allen's a little taller than Chris Paul, but Chris Paul's kind of a little bulldog. He doesn't give up. He plays hard defense.
He should not be guarding Kevin Durant like
but
that.
We figured out Kevin Durant's kryptonite. He cannot handle that type of guy, and I think some of his length has something to do with that. I feel like he's not as natural of a ball handler. Desmond, you said something about LeBron James. He's not the same ball handler as LeBron James. LeBron James has the point guard set. Kevin Durant doesn't. He has good handles. We see him cross guys over. But it's harder for him. He has such a wingspan, long legs. It's easy for guys like Chris Paul and Tony Allen. If you've watched either series, they get right in his shirt, and they're right there, and they're all over him. And he can't post, and they know he can't post. He cannot back them down. And if you looked at Chris Paul a lot, Kevin Durant was facing him in Game 4. He just wasn't able to. He had the ball. There was so much space. Chris Paul was right here, right in this area where he's holding the ball high, and he couldn't do anything. I feel like there was a lot of instances where if Kevin Durant tried to make a move, Chris Paul either would have stole the ball or, Durant could have committed an offensive foul easily because Chris Paul's right in his face. I just feel like – Go ahead.
I agree with what you're saying. I think what you see, honestly, is that small guys get away with a lot when they're defending bigger defenders because it's kind of – the refs kind of give them a little bit of leeway because they know about the disadvantage they are. And I think the LeBron James and Kevin Durant thing is a little different because LeBron James beats you with his strength. If Chris Paul guarding LeBron James is going to take him to the rim, hit him with that nice little elbow, and all of a sudden Chris Paul's going to go back 10 feet and he's just going to lay it up. Kevin Durant beats you with his quickness.
LeBron can take him off the dribble, though, too.
He could.
I don't think Durant can take him off the dribble.
But Durant's Durant's best move is he beats you with his quickness. Like, all of a sudden, you don't expect the guy that's 7 feet tall to just, go around you. And that's how Kevin Durant beats people. And
it's
then
that first step. It's like Carmelo.
It's the first step, and he can shoot over anybody. So that's how Kevin Durant beats you. But just to go back to your original point about, what if they draw up plays now, I think it's too late. I think that's what the regular season is for, is you can't all of a sudden go into Game 5 and you haven't been drawing up plays for the last 3 years and be like, okay, we're gonna run a play now. You know what I mean? I think it's a little bit too late. And
What is this?
I think the one thing that people underestimate is just how much OKC wins games just based on their pure talent. You can win 50 games, 55 games in this league in the regular season just by having 2 of the best 10 players in the league on the same court at the same time. That will win you 50 games because
LeBron won 60 plus in Cleveland.
Right. Just from being LeBron James. He's got Mo Williams as his sidekick and he's winning 60 games because he's LeBron James. And I think people underestimate that.
And just to add to Frank's point, I think it is too late at this point to implement new schemes.
It is.
But spacing can always change.
Absolutely.
And this game, the game we saw last night between the Heat and the Nets was very similar to the game we saw between the Clippers and the Thunder because at one point the spacing for Eric Spoelstra wasn't working, and the Nets were just capitalizing on defense. They were collapsing on LeBron, making it hard, and there was a slew of turnovers. After the timeout, Eric Spoelstra puts James Jones out there.
That was the difference in the game.
And he says, you know what, I'm not going to play favorites. James Jones, you go out there, and the spacing changed. Frank, I know you watched that game. James Jones' ability to shoot was respected. So now you have the floor spread. You have Eric Spoelstra putting someone out there that the Nets are not too familiar with. They only know by name because the simple fact is James Jones didn't play a lot during the season. You don't see that from Scott Brooks. If something's not working, he keeps going with it, and he just keeps going till the wheels fall off.
That is almost playing favorites though, because that's LeBron James' guy. That's who he wants out there is James.
That's true.
But it's not a favorite of Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra would probably rather have UD out there.
Absolutely.
Right. I think that's one of those things that basketball, like casual basketball fans, don't understand. Like, I don't think James Jones actually scored a basket in last night's game, but he was the difference maker in the game, and I don't think people understand how that can actually be a thing. But
he had like
exactly what happened last.
He had like 9 late points, a couple of threes in the loss too. James Jones did.
Right. Yeah, he was hitting threes in game 3.
It didn't matter, but it was because it was late in the game. But he was out there and he was
just
playing.
So people understand, that's James Jones now. But if he's still on a team, that's going to be Mike Miller. So that's someone who the Heat certainly missed. But the fact that Eric Spoelstra threw him out there in an important playoff game, that's what makes him a top 5 coach, and that's what's lacking in Scott Brooks is the fact that there's no changing of of any spacing. Scheme-wise, I would understand if it's too late to change because it is the postseason, and you're not just going to throw the clipboard out and say, you know what, we have to do something new. But spacing is the most important thing in the NBA playoffs.
Let's move on to the coaching things. I think what we're all trying to really say is, while the Thunder are hard to guard because they have Durant and Westbrook, their scheme is probably the easiest to guard out of all the teams left in the playoffs. Because we know what they're going to do. And
you think you can win on talent alone? You don't have enough talent.
That's the only way. That's the only way they can do it. All right, so let's jump into the coaching because there's a lot of names to talk about here. We'll start with Mike Brown because he's been fired by the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Again.
What is this? The 9th time that he's been fired by the Cavaliers. Obviously we're joking, but let's talk about Mike Brown being fired. Let's talk about possible candidates to replace him. I also want to mention that Steve Kerr wants 5 years, $30 million, talking to the Knicks. We have Stan Van Gundy. His name's being mentioned. I haven't really heard anything from Van Gundy. We have Mark Jackson, who's recently fired by the Golden State Warriors, who's probably going to get some sort of job here, I would imagine. And you have, George Karl, the teacher. Let's go to you first, Michael, because you didn't really talk there much at the end of that last one.
Oh no, but that's okay. I enjoyed listening. It's always a good thing.
No, you didn't.
You're right, I didn't. But I'm being, I'm trying to play the nice guy here. I'm playing off the fact that my teammates were having fun, and I respect it. But along the line, I can't talk all the time, guys. Come on. I mean, people don't want to hear that, do they? Nah. I'm turning into Skip Bayless here. Anyways, I kind of get this feeling that as much as I want to see George Karl back coaching again, and preferably coaching a team that wears a yellow jersey with gold lettering, I don't think that he's going to, because I think he's hit that age point where he's like, nah, maybe I want to sit in this nice, comfy, air-conditioned room at ESPN and just talk about people that I used to say bad things about, to my team about how much they suck or whatever. So I don't think George Karl's going to come back to coaching as much as I'd like to see it, because I've always liked George Karl. He's a good guy. Mark Jackson is obviously going to be the top name on anybody's list. Obviously you got the stuff that he did with Steph Curry. Could potentially do that with Kyrie Irving. I mean, Kyrie Irving is one of the budding stars in this league. I've always liked watching him, even in college. I always thought he was an exciting player. And then, of course, anytime there's a coaching vacancy, Van Gundy is mentioned. It's got to happen. It's the NBA. It's like, Jordan dropping 50 on a regular basis. It just happens. Steve Kerr, I don't know, because it's obviously he's a Phil Jackson guy. Phil Jackson obviously wants him in New York. But the thing is, you've got a young team here in Cleveland. It's got pieces, but you've got to find a way to motivate that first-round guy that was Anthony Bennett. I mean, did he even exist this year? Did he even play a game?
Kwame
was he drafted?
Jr.
Like, Michael Olowokandi 2.0 right here. I mean, complete surprise that he was even drafted. Michael Olowokandi's becoming my boy. Like him and Darius Miles and, like all these no-name guys that nobody hears about anymore. Anthony Bennett is going to become that real fast unless somebody can get in there, light a fire under this dude's ass, and get this guy, obviously he's got the ability. You wouldn't have been the number 1 overall pick out of UNLV.
Yeah.
Woo! Go Running Rebels. Home of Paul Westville. Stacey Augmon. All those other greats. Yeah, no. You obviously, for somebody to think that you were the number 1 player in the draft, you had to have talent somewhere. And
But it's Cleveland,
whoever this
though.
coach is,
We don't trust Cleveland.
I understand. It's Cleveland. They totally screwed they've screwed everything up in Cleveland. I mean, right now you've got the Tim Couch of the NBA sitting on your bench. You need a coach to come in and light a fire under his ass.
That ain't even right.
Who's going to do it? I don't even know. I don't know yet. I'm going to be just as surprised as the Cleveland fan base, whoever is announced.
I would like to start my my segment off by just giving a standing ovation to Mike Brown. Mike Brown, the professional check casher. He's collecting like 9 checks right now from 9 different teams. So you just
including the Lakers.
You lay on a beach. You just watch everything happen. It's cool. You're set for life. He's got like the retirement plan over there, collecting checks from everybody. He's like getting royalty
Johnson
checks
2.0 over here.
But as far as the open vacancies, I would really like to see Mark Jackson take the Cleveland job for the reasons Michael pointed out. I think he'd be great for Kyrie. I think Kyrie and Dion Waiters are very much like Steph and Klay Thompson. I think he could do very similar things with the two of them. I think Steve Kerr does end up in New York because I think Phil Jackson, that's who he wants, and with the new regime, he's going to get him whatever he wants. I don't think Steve Kerr deserves 5 years and $30 million, considering he's never coached an NBA team before, but whatever.
Proven commodity.
Phil Jackson's probably figuring he's stealing money, why not, share the wealth a little bit. The Lakers' job is the one that's kind of up in the air for me. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what kind of coach they need because I don't think they know what kind of team they are. Are they a rebuilding team or are they going for one more championship with Kobe? I mean, in those two scenarios, you have two very different kind of coaches that you need. So I think that one's still in a weird direction. The Warriors' job, I think, is the best job out there. I don't think it's a question. They have the most talent. They have the,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question.
I mean, they were one game of playing still.
Right. So they said Stan Van Gundy's having an interview there soon. I don't know if I like Stan Van Gundy with that team, just because.
Yes, you do. The 3-point shooting, it's there.
The 3-point shooting is there. I think a Mark Jackson kind of coach is the coach that seems to work for them, like that motivational guy. He's giving you the speech. Stan Van Gundy isn't that guy. He's gonna be like, "Why didn't you run the play the way I wanted to? Get out."
Staff!
Exactly.
Get over there!
But I mean, I guess the trend is with any coach in any sport, it's when you fire one kind of coach, you usually hire like the complete opposite to see if that gets through to your team. So I guess from that aspect, it makes sense to hire Stan Van Gundy. So I'm curious to see. That would be the one I'm most curious about, to see how Stan Van Gundy coaches the Warriors if he gets that job.
And real quick, to piggyback off of Santos right here. Mitch Kupchak came out, I think it was either yesterday or sometime today. Well, it was obviously yesterday. Apparently the Lakers' job right now, they don't plan on hiring a coach anytime soon, but they said that the search is, in its early to mid stages. They're obviously going to be looking for a coach, and they obviously are right now. But they said that, don't expect one anytime soon. So
I honestly think the Lakers are waiting to see what kind of draft pick they get before they decide what direction they're going in.
Yeah.
They're going to hire Mike Brown. Desmond.
Again? God.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers did it.
Mike Brown, cut the check.
No.
Well, with both of you guys made great points. Frank, just to go over one thing you said, when teams when you usually fire a coach, you usually bring in someone that's the complete opposite, like you said, which is very true. I'm not sure that's going to work in the case of the Warriors because their team is predicated on that shooting. Like, that's their strength. And if you change up the scheme maybe a little bit too much, that may affect Steph's game. It may affect it definitely would affect Klay's game because Klay doesn't have the handling ability that Steph has. I mean, Steph could probably he would still thrive in this league if you took some of his shot attempts away just for his playmaking ability alone. But that would definitely hurt Klay. Harrison Barnes is a shooter as well. But the Mike Brown situation, is anybody ever really surprised when he's fired? It's just like one of those things that's expected in the NBA. Like,
he's not even shocked when it happens.
No, he probably
he's got his bag packed.
Again, yeah. Avery Johnson 2.0. Nobody's expecting. Everybody's like, oh wow, who cares?
Nobody is surprised. I mean, with Steve Kerr asking for $30 million 5 years, it's not the money I would pay him because the man is not proven in the NBA as a coach. However, if I'm Steve Kerr, that is smart as hell. I'm not coaching this train wreck of an organization unless you're paying me $30 million.
But he knows they want him too. That's the other smart part. It's
Exactly.
Like Phil Jackson said he wants Steve Kerr. It's his job basically. Steve Kerr's like, yo, give me $60 million a season.
I'm Desmond Palmer, the young analyst who covers the Miami Heat and is on this great Google Hangout with you guys, and I would demand $30 million if the Knicks asked me to coach, but they never would. Because that's just, you want that security. But if I am Steve Kerr, I am paying attention to that Golden State team. Why not coach a Steph Curry and a Klay Thompson, a backcourt that could rival the other young backcourts to be the best 2 to 3 years from now? You know, you get an Andrew Bogut back. Who knows if he stays healthy? Try to move him if you can. Get a young center.
Won't.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
You won't get him back.
Yeah, try to get a young big man. You know, try to not someone who's gonna post up necessarily and basically stop the momentum during those fast break transitions when they like to take those trailing threes. But get someone who's athletic. Get someone who's gonna block shots, be a force in the paint. Because the Warriors don't need a scoring big man. They don't need someone who's gonna put his back to the basket and maybe score 18 points per game, 8 rebounds. They just need an athletic big man who's going to block shots. They need someone who can occasionally score points, but they just need someone who's going to roll to the basket in the pick and rolls, that's going to be a force on the boards. And last but not least, with the Lakers, I give them credit for waiting it out. I give them credit for, looking at the situation as a total and saying, listen, we need to take some time here because they had their coach, and they lost him to the New York Knicks, and he's now in their front office. So, I mean, they had him. He wanted the job. Phil Jackson wanted the job. That will forever be the most maddening thing I've ever seen on,
Thank you.
come over on being reported. That Phil Jackson, I think we all agree, is probably the greatest coach of all time.
Yes.
Wanted the job. Wanted. Keyword emphasis. Wanted. Hashtag wanted the job. And
you know whose fault it is?
The
though?
Lakers went another.
It's Russell Westbrook's
Westbrook's.
Blame
Hey,
Westbrook.
wait. You know what name we're not mentioning in all these coaching vacancies? Mike
Barack
D'Antoni.
Obama. Oh yeah, we're not.
Mike
gonna-
D'Antoni.
I'd
Why
probably
isn't Mike
take Barack
D'Antoni getting
Obama over Mike D'Antoni.
anywhere?
So
I
I guess my stance really on this coaching thing is I feel like I agree with you guys. Steve Kerr is going to the Knicks. He's going to get the money because, like Frank said, Phil Jackson said, "Hey, I'm stealing salary. We'll spread it around."
He wanted him for the Seattle job. If he would have went back to Seattle, he said Steve Kerr is going to be my guy. So definitely.
So Steve Kerr, the Knicks. I think the Golden State thing is interesting. I feel like Stan Van Gundy does work there. I'm a guy who watched a lot of Stan Van Gundy ball when he was having, good success with the Magic for my team. And I feel like this team has some similarities. They're different at the positions, but they can play the same kind of basketball. Because Stan Van Gundy in Orlando, all he did was load up shooters around Dwight Howard. They played outside in. Tell me you can't play outside in with that team. I mean, you have some more creative guys, and Steph Curry's a lot more creative with Jameer Nelson at the point guard position. I would put – I think the only – and actually, Hedo Turkoglu and Andre Iguodala have similar offensive games. They both can play that point forward. Hedo was a little taller. They don't really have the Rashard Lewis type shooter from the power forward position. David Lee, to me, is the guy that would be most in question. You
don't think Draymond Green can duplicate what Rashard Lewis is doing?
I think he could, but I wonder about David Lee. My issue is with David Lee. Like, where's David Lee in this offense? I don't know how he works. I'm not saying he doesn't. But if you look at Golden State's roster next season, they're only looking at losing Jermaine O'Neal and Steve Blake. I think Jermaine O'Neal's a good guy to have back as your backup. If Bogut can stay healthy, he can be the same type of player Dwight Howard was as far as being a defensive anchor would go. And then
That's
you have
a huge if, though.
But you have a lot of shooters. I'm saying I feel like that job kind of works for Van Gundy. Although, as Frank alluded to, you go for Mark Jackson, who's kind of like a, hand on the shoulder. Hey, son, you're doing a great job. Let's get out there and motivate. As where Stan Van Gundy's going to be yelling at Steph Curry. Steph Curry might cry under Stan Van Gundy. I don't know.
Or Steph Curry might.
Steph Curry
might demand he be fired.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that works from a motivational point. For the Lakers, personally, I like what Frank said. I think that they're going to wait until they draft somebody, although I do like a guy like George Karl there, just because it is the Lakers. They're a storied franchise. George Karl is kind of that coach. You mentioned Mike D'Antoni. What about Mike D'Antoni? Do you think the Warriors would have the allure to hire Mike D'Antoni with all the way they play basketball? That's funny to me.
No.
Well, I was thinking that. I swear to God, I was thinking that.
As far as the Cavaliers,
150 and give up 155. Let's do it.
Exactly.
As far as the Cavaliers go, I kind of like George Karl there too. Although I don't know that George Karl wants to end up in Cleveland, but Mark Jackson.
Johnny Manziel doesn't want to be in Cleveland.
I don't think it happened with Scott Brooks, but I think I would like Mark Jackson in Oklahoma as OKC's coach. I feel like he's a guy that is popular with the players. OKC in the position where you don't really need to do much more than drop a few plays once in a while, and that team will be better. But who knows? Let's jump into our last topic. Let's go with last week we did where we picked who was going to win the West. A little refresher on that. I don't remember who everybody picked. I picked OKC. I think. Did you guys all pick the Spurs?
I picked the Spurs.
I picked the Portland Trailblazers, and I'm going down with the ship.
All right, Desmond. Well, you're not.
Oh wow! You think they're going to come back for 3-0?
No, I mean literally the ship is going down, and I'm.
Captain, we're sinking.
So we had OKC. We had a Spurs. Frank, who'd you pick?
I picked the Spurs.
The Spurs. So we had two Spurs, an OKC, and a Portland. So let's shout out of a cannon this week. And who do we have winning the NBA Finals? We'll make this easy, Miami Heat or the Field? I won't even make you pick somebody if you don't want to pick the Heat. This was actually Frank's idea. Let's go to you first, Michael.
The Field.
The Field. Simple as that.
The Field because I picked the Spurs to win it all. So the Field.
Okay. Frank.
I also have the Field. I think Miami has a lot of tough series ahead of them.
Desmond?
I'm going to go with the Heat, but what Frank said and what, it keeps ringing in my head. LeBron James is doing so much. He's exerting so much energy. Are the rest of his teammates going to be there when he needs them to be? But I'm going to stick with the Heat.
My question. With another ship, Desmond.
My answer's sort of going to be a cop out because I picked the Thunder to win the West. But I'm going to say that I'm picking the Field as well, but I'm going to dive into that a little deeper. I'm going to say whoever wins the Thunder-Clippers series, I think is going to win the NBA championship. I'm leaning towards the Thunder because I did pick them to win. So I think they'll be. I feel
the opposite. I think it's this. I think the Spurs. This is like their destiny to win this title. After last year, if they get to the finals after last year, I think they win it.
I feel like it's been their destiny to just like win. I thought last year was their destiny when they had the Heat on the ropes, and then it didn't happen. So.
See, I thought this Blazers series that they were going was going to be a hell of a lot closer.
Yeah, I thought.
I mean, they're getting the shit kicked out of them.
We were talking about
this. Demolished.
Yeah.
Houston or Portland could get it, either one of them.
I will say this though,
Andy, they can't defend.
Andy, you have a good point. The winner of Los Angeles Clippers, OKC Thunder. If the Thunder move on, if I'm Scott Brooks, I'm afraid for what's going to happen to Westbrook when he has to match up against Tony Parker because Tony Parker is going to school Russell Westbrook.
But it's going to be the same thing, though. It's going to be give-take because it's the same thing with Chris Paul. Russell Westbrook's going to do the same exact thing to Tony Parker on the other end. I mean, there's no defense at the point guard position as far as these series go. I just feel like this is the only series where a team's getting battle-tested. Miami's pretty much running away with this. The Spurs are running away with theirs. And it looks like Indiana's running away with that series against Washington. So I almost feel like whoever comes out, the Clippers, and this may be a bad theory, but the Clippers or the Thunder, they're beat up. They're coming through with scars. I think it's playoff experience, and I feel like these teams – it's not like either of these teams are, the Wizards, who we think maybe the Wizards could beat the Pacers, but they're going to get killed by the Heat. I think we have Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. We have Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. I just feel like there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the Blazers, but they were not ready for the Spurs. That next year the Spurs had.
They'll be back.
We're giving the Heat too much credit here. What happens if, Roy Hibbert goes on another fishing trip and goes off for like 55 a game? He pulls a, remarkable rabbit out of his hat, and, Indiana sweeps Miami. I mean, we're giving the Heat a little. I mean, I still think they're going to win.
I think they'll be there. I mean,
I will give you this
total shot here.
I will give you this though. Roy Hibbert, he doesn't even have to score. He had 28 points the other night. He doesn't even have to score to be effective. That's not even what we're asking for. We're just asking for him to be that defensive force in the paint, to grab boards when you need to, and block shots.
8 and 3.
So, yes, he can do that. He can be the anchor on the team that can dethrone the Heat.
Let me close on
this.
If the Pacers actually sweep the Heat, Roy Hibbert's girl will never allegedly sleep with any of his teammates ever again.
And the funniest part to me, the funniest thing to me is
Razul Butler, man.
Can anybody even
Razul
picture
Butler.
Roy Hibbert fishing? I've never seen a guy who's
slept with Razul Butler
fish before. No, stop that. That's ridiculous.
So he probably drops the fish every time.
He's too good. I want to shout out.
He just needs to reach down.
I want to shout out everybody for tuning into the show. Until next time, run over to www.sports-kings.com. Check us out. Hit subscribe. Comment on our videos. We'll see you next week.